Hi, hello, what's good, what's up? My name is Hannah. Welcome back to my ongoing existential crisis disguised as a YouTube channel. I read some books in July. So here's how these videos work. I'm gonna tell you what books I read, and then I'm going to cut to vlogs of me reading the books, which are full of spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled, you don't have to watch the vlogs. I will provide a timestamp right here where you can jump to avoid spoilers for the following book. This month, I read I'm Not Dying With You Tonight by Kimberly Jones and Gilly Segal. Soft on Soft by Mina Waheed. The Extraordinaries by Klune. Love Beyond Body, Space, and Time, edited by Nicholson. The Way to the Stars by Ancrum. And one more book that I am not going to tell you about until the end of the video. You'll just have to watch and find out what it was. Anyway, we're about to jump to the vlog. If you want to avoid spoilers, go ahead and go to this timestamp right here. Otherwise, enjoy, and I'll meet back with you in a bit. Hi, hello, what's good, what's up? Very customer service voice. It's July now. I have not been vlogging as I should. I did not just start the book that I'm about to talk to you about. I actually started it in June, but I've gotten the bulk of reading it done during July. I'm reading I'm Not Dying With You Tonight by Kimberly Jones and Gilly Segal. I saw Kimberly Jones's speech on How We Can Win a little while ago, and I'll put a little excerpt from it here.
How can you win? You can't win. The game is fixed. So when they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything. We don't own anything. Trevor Noah said it so beautifully last night. There's a social contract that we all have, that if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is killing us. So the social contract is broken. And if the social contract is broken, why the f do I give a shit about burning the Football Hall of Fame, about burning the Target? You broke the contract when you killed us in the streets and didn't give a f. You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own, by our bootstraps in Tulsa, and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract, so f your Target, f your Hall of Fame. As far as I'm concerned, they could burn this bitch to the ground. And it still wouldn't be enough. And they are lucky that what black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
She's an incredibly compelling speaker, and when I learned that she had a book out, I really wanted to read it. It's essentially about two girls written from two different perspectives. Lena is black, very fashion forward. She's like super sharp, super savvy, very popular. And she's very much like a leader and a caretaker among her group of friends, and is very preoccupied with her boyfriend, Black, who is about 20 something. Campbell is white, just moved to the neighborhood like a few weeks ago. She was living with her mom. Her parents are divorced, but her mom moved abroad for business, and so she had to move in with her dad for her senior year of high school. Both girls end up at the same football game. Campbell is working concessions. Lena is there to buy a soda when kind of all hell breaks loose. Their local football team is up against another football team that is majority white, that has some background in like being anti-black, like very loudly, and a fight starts at the school that results in a security guard getting shot, that results in riots throughout the city. And Lena and Campbell end up having to team up in order to escape the situation and try to survive the night together. And the book basically follows them for this one night. And it's very good. I am in like kind of the last 15 minutes of the book. I think it's very good at putting the reader in a position to like experience firsthand what it's like to be in a situation that spirals this wildly out of control. There's actually not a lot of conversation about like why this kind of stuff happens. It's just kind of a running undercurrent in the background, but it's not something that the girls are talking a lot about because they're just trying to get through the night. The way that systemic injustice affects both of them is just being reflected in their personalities, their backgrounds, how they act. They're just caught in a whirlwind situation that they have no control over, that they are just trying to ride out together. It's very interesting as like a very small kind of case study of how this kind of stuff manifests in real life for real people, where like no one person is a perfect avatar upon which to project all of systemic racism or all of its effects. And the girls, while being very different, are forging a bond together that like I really like. They're protecting each other and like being true to one another and showcasing a lot of loyalty to one another because they've both gone through like this really intense thing together. I do ship it. I've cried twice. Both times it was a result of me just like really viscerally feeling the emotion of the moment that they're in. I think there is something really interesting about writing an entire book that takes place over just a few hours. Everything that they are experiencing, I feel like it has so much grounding in reality in terms of how intense the emotion is. Yeah, I started crying because I was scared for them. It's a really scary situation that they're in, and I'm very interested to see how the book resolves. I'm very worried. I was gonna go out, but I only have 17 minutes of the book left. That's why I'm filming this now, because I was like, I didn't want to film all of it at the end of the book. So I will finish the book real quick and then I will talk to you again in a second. Hi, hello. Okay, I'm done. I don't have any complaints about this book. I don't read a lot of middle grade books, but this one is just very, very strong. Very good at kind of like presenting the situation that they're in and like making both of them incredibly sympathetic. I loved the moments where they realize that they shouldn't be taking their anger out on one another, but they don't really know how to communicate what they're actually feeling. They don't have the time, they don't have the emotional intelligence. They know that they should, but they usually only end up backtracking from anger, not actually able to express what they're really feeling. And that feels very real, especially for the age. Final climax, like the choices that got made with Peanut and that whole crew, very interesting, like a very interesting way to kind of, in microcosm, explore certain things that happen within the Black community, like intra-communal problems. There isn't one way to think about it. Like, even if you can say that like one action based on how it affected one other person is morally wrong, like when you get into kind of the heady stuff of like, is it generally morally wrong to do this? For example, Lena makes a pretty good argument for like why people riot and why violence ends up being a part of protest, especially in this age of nonviolent protest being less and less effective because it's been so criminalized, which I won't get into, but which is a real thing. I'm gonna link to Innuendo Studios' video about that, about the gradual degradation of the effectiveness of the Gandhi effect. Lena's speech actually felt like a proto speech of the author, where like having seen her give that actual speech in person before, you can kind of see like the talking points very much mirrored in the book. And I think the book itself is a compelling piece of art that illustrates her point. I'm not quite sure what I'll rate it, but yeah, I did really like it, and I'm happy that I read it. It was a hard read when I picked it up just because of stuff that's going on, but it's definitely, I think it's very worth reading, and it's very timely right now. It's very timely, and of course, you know, support people who are out here like doing activism, like artists, Black artists who are out here doing the fucking work. I'm not really sure what I'm gonna read next. I have a anthology that I'm working on, which is called Love Beyond Body, Space, and Time. It's a compilation of works by Native and Indigenous authors. I've started the compilation. The compilation kind of starts with essays about kind of the state of affairs, and it's very interesting, but I haven't actually gotten to any of the fiction in it, so like we'll see. I'm also looking at reading a few books that Mina recommends. She's actually my newest booktube follow, and I love her content so much. I have been binging her videos all week, and there are a few books that she's recommended that sound really good. I'm interested in seeing if like our tastes align, and so I might look into those as well, but I don't really have a plan this month, so we'll just kind of see what happens. Hi, hello, what's good? What's up? I don't know how to start this particular segment. I'm not gonna take my headphones off because I'm listening to lo-fi, and you're not really here, so it's not rude for me to continue to listen to music while we're talking. So I'm reading Soft on Soft by Mina Waheed, which I took from Mina Reads, June Reads. Soft on Soft is a Kindle Unlimited book. It follows June, who is a Persian Arab makeup artist who is pansexual, and Selena, who is a Black Instagram model. She's demisexual. June does her makeup. The book is super cute. I'm talking to you right now because I'm actually pretty sure I'm gonna finish it in like one sitting. I'm already like 25% of the way through it. Lots of representation representation, lots of representation of like brown queer girls. I have a few issues with it. It definitely needed a stronger editing pass. I found several typos that like render sentences borderline incomprehensible until you're like, oh no, that's a typo, let me replace it with the word that is supposed to be here. And that's not necessarily on the author, like that's an editor problem. There's also like no conflict yet, so I guess we'll see how that evolves. Like, I don't know, it's nice. It's a very nice story. It definitely, it's moving along. Hi, hello, good evening. I finished Soft on Soft a little while ago, kind of been percolating on it. I thought I was only 90% into the novel, but it turns out that at the end of the novel, there is an explicit sex scene that you can either read or not read. It's kind of like an extra after the epilogue, which feels very fanficky. Not to deride fanfiction. I love fanfiction. It's just a convention that's very like kind of central to fanfiction and not very central to traditionally published novels. I didn't love it. I read it very quickly. Actually, speaking of fanfiction, if you've ever wished that like some of the comfy coziness of coffee shop AUs were a thing in traditional books where like there's essentially no conflict whatsoever, it's just characters like getting to have a nice time and forge a fairly realistic relationship that isn't defined by drama in any way. It is just a relationship and they're just both very happy for all of it. This book is for you. But for me, I found myself really bored. I cannot overstate how much there is no conflict in this book. Like there's no problems. I do feel that most of my grudge with the book is personal. You know, it was very comfy, cozy. It was kind of what I needed today because I feel like I got hit by a truck. I got overheated yesterday and so I'm just not feeling that great. And so it was like kind of a way to pass the time, but in a stationary bike kind of way where you're pedaling but you're not really getting anywhere. A lot of the time when I read books about asexual characters, I find myself getting really frustrated because I haven't read too many. In fact, I can only think of 2 offhand, and in both instances, the asexual character was romantically and sexually available to their partner. As an asexual and aromantic person, that is not how I am, and it's not how I experience my sexuality, and so I find that super alienating. Way more so than if the asexual character was just a different sexuality. But seeing asexual characters experiencing asexuality in a way that I don't, and in a way that most of the people that I know who are asexual don't, it just feels weird. It doesn't feel representative of my experience. It's very annoying to me because it kind of makes it seem like I can't have myself represented in books. Like my experience of asexuality just will never show up. Asexuality might, but only if it's the type of asexuality that is super compatible with other allosexual partners. Like the reason I didn't read the sex scene at the end of the book is multitudinous, and I'll get into like the other reason in a second. But part of it is that Selena isn't sex repulsed, but she is not super into sex. But for the author's purposes, she is completely sexually available to the main character, and I'm annoyed by that. I find that very annoying. And that isn't to say that like asexuality is a huge umbrella and it includes a lot of people. It may very well be that your experience of asexuality is a lot closer to hers. She is demisexual specifically, so as she grows closer to the main character, like it makes sense that she would become more sexually available to them. Even so, the second reason I didn't read the sex scene is something that I think affects the book a lot more, and in a way that isn't just personal to me. I don't know who these characters are. There's something to be said for the fact that in a story capacity, conflict really shows you who characters are and how they deal with problems. And when there's no conflict in the book, it can be really difficult to get a sense of who characters are. I felt like both June and Selena were just kind of a list of traits. I couldn't figure out why they were attracted to each other. I don't know what it would be like to like sit down and talk to either of them. It wasn't like they were more shallowly realized than any other character in the book. I don't think any character in this book is actually very deep and well realized. When it's your 2 main characters, like your main character and their love interest, I think that's especially problematic. They have personalities that are different from one another, but like I would really struggle to articulate them past Selena is bright and bubbly, June is quiet and shy and anxious. There are lots of things in this book that are interesting, but they all happen outside of the scope of the story. There were multiple times in the book, for example, later on, this is a spoiler, but not really, Selena announces that she has gotten a part in a television series. She's never talked about wanting to act before. There's been no conversation about her going to auditions or anything. Like, she just goes from being an incredibly successful Instagram model to being the lead in a television show. She also says she's acted before? When? Like, how did this just not come up? But don't worry, it like doesn't affect the plot at all. It just happens off screen, basically. Honestly, a lot of the most interesting things that like actually happen off screen. June lost her father, it turns out, and like that has affected her relationship with her mom. They never go into how it happened or how it's really affected her. It's really kind of, they just barely mention it in chapter 2 and they just barely mention it again, you know, when they're interacting with her mom. It's really frustrating to read a book where nothing happens. Now, that said, I think that this book is put together in very good faith. I think this book is very well intentioned in what it's trying to do. Like at the beginning of this book, there is a very sweet dedication to fat, queer, anxious girls, of which I am one. And there's also a content warning for things in 2 chapters of the book, which I thought was very cool. It really kind of lends itself to a book that is very much a safe, conflict-free zone. This is the kind of book that it's like, it's very sweet, it's very cute, it's very fat friendly. I actually can't remember the last time I read a book that was this fat friendly. It's just very interested in like, you know, people getting together and being soft and having a nice time. I think that there are some people who are really gonna enjoy this novel who've like really been looking for something like this. I am not one of them. I find this sort of thing incredibly cloying and insipid and annoying. And that is because I am a gremlin who feasts on chaos and cannot get through a book if there is not a little bit of drama. This one is just not, it just didn't do it for me. I have no idea what we're gonna read next. I can't believe like last month was so structured and July we are just flying by the fucking seat of our ass. There's no plan. There's no plan. I'm not turning my LEDs on for this one because I don't give a shit. Hi, hello, what's good? What's up? It is now July 22nd. So I'm still reading Love Beyond Body, Time and Space, but I'm also reading The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune. And I know that this book is very well liked, and I think you guys are not gonna like what I have to say about it. The Extraordinaries is a YA novel about a boy named Nick who lives in a world where superheroes are uncommon but real. Nick is obsessed with one superhero in particular. He then becomes obsessed with becoming an extraordinary himself and tries to do so with the help of his friends, including his friend Seth, who he may or may not have a crush on. Okay, preface. So I love superfiction. I'm like very into superhero fiction, but I think superhero fiction is extremely bad at a few things, and one of them is commentary on the real world. A lot of superhero fiction comes very close to like actually critiquing things like law enforcement, but they don't. They never actually do. They get so close and then they pussy out.
I told them to go, they sliding no plan. I can't find you, bitch, I kill your man. Hold on for ransom, make them sure for bands. It's funny how people become pussies all of a sudden.
I have 2 pretty major beefs with this book, and specifically with the main character of this book. One of my minor beefs is that this book wants to be way woker than it is, like way more progressive than it is. It wants to be way funnier than it is. This book is bare minimum Twitter in terms of like what it offers in the progressivism category. There are at least 2 rape jokes that I found in this book so far. They don't explicitly use the word rape. They imply it in such a way that it's like, that's not cute. Minor beef. The one black girl in their friend group just so happens to be really aggressive, and her experience just doesn't seem to be informed by her blackness at all. Like, there's this whole scene where she meets Seth and Nick and she like kicks a bully, giving them a hard time in the crotch, and then cries wolf about it, about how he's punking her because she's a girl, and she doesn't get in trouble, which I wish was true to life, but isn't. She definitely would have gotten in trouble because black children get in trouble more often than their white peers and are seen as fundamentally more aggressive. So the fact that that just kind of went by with no critique is, I think, in poor taste. Minor beef number 4. Both of the girls are competent badasses. One of them is a take no shit competent badass, and the other one is a manic pixie dream girl badass. It just makes their characters really one-dimensional. But let's get to the major beef, because I have major beef, specifically with Nick. So there are 2 things about Nick that I have major beef with, and they are 2 things that I have major beef with because I am those 2 things. I have ADHD and I write superhero fan fiction. So I'm 50% into the book, and Seth just asks Nick what he likes about Starscream, or whatever the fuck his name is. Shadowstar, that's his name. He just asked Nick what he likes about him and like who he thinks he is as a person, and Nick had no answer. And let me just tell you, as somebody who wrote a ton of fanfiction as a teenager, Nick would have a detailed answer. Just that Nick is like, I don't know, he's heroic, he's good, I guess, he's fucking hot. Like, you're telling me you're obsessed with this man and you can't tell me one thing that you like about him, or like a way that you think that he is, or like what his personality is. If you were obsessed with this person, you would be obsessed with this exact detail, and you would have made up a whole backstory on your own. Like, I can't tolerate this. Hi, my camera died. While I was waiting for my battery to charge, I read a little bit further, and Nick made a joke about police brutality. Just hate that for him. So major beef number 2. So I have ADHD. I have had ADHD for as long as I can remember, and I acknowledge that the experience of the disorder is a spectrum and that not everybody's experience of it is the same. Nick's experience of ADHD rings so inauthentic to me. It's just so not what ADHD is like. Like, yes, your thoughts are extremely rapid and chaotic and they like never cease. But like, you can always draw a line from the thing that inspired you thinking about the thing to where you ended up. What seems random to other people is actually a pretty like linear path in your own brain. You've just jumped so far ahead of, like, for example, the current conversation that people are like, what are you talking about? But even as a teenager, I could kind of walk people through how I'd gotten there, and it was actually pretty rare for people to be incapable of jumping there with me. Nick's ADHD comes off as so, oh my god, LOL, random. Like, his impulsivity doesn't read authentic either. I was also a stupid teenager who made dumb decisions. My truly impulsive decision making, those impulses were small. It was about like making noise when I shouldn't make noise, or getting too loud in quiet spaces. But when it came to big impulses, like making big bad decisions, which I did do, that almost always stemmed from a desire to entertain the people around me. And that's not to say that Nick should be a class clown. It's just to say that his impulsivity just doesn't read to me. The fact that he like constantly voices the end result of like what he's thinking when his brain is doing its wild loops, like it just reads so fake. It's so fake. I just am not getting any emotion out of this book. Like, it's just not really hitting. You know what I mean? I went into this with high hopes and they have all been dashed. I'm very ready to be done with this book, so I'm gonna keep reading and see if I can just bust it out by the end of today. But yeah, I'm not liking it. Hi, hello, what's good, what's up? I'm back. As I predicted, I was able to finish it by the end of the day. I don't know, it was fine. I cried a bit, but I actually don't know how much of that was the book and how much of it is my current mental state. You know, it's like number 1 in a series. I don't need any more of this story. I'm not interested in seeing where this story goes. And like, and there were just so many parts of it that I was like, yeah, all right, whatever. Ending was cute. The relationship is cute. I think maybe I have been unfairly biased against friends to lovers as a trope. It can be done well, which prior to this year, I was convinced it could not. But in a work where the alternative to the friend is not much more interesting than the friend, and the dynamic there isn't much more engaging than the friendship, friends to lovers is fine. Didn't like Nick pretty much all the way through. I thought he was absurdly dumb. Like, I thought that a lot of the things that like he didn't pick up on and that the plot was like kind of all about him not picking up on were absurd. And I guess that was part of the humorous element to it that it's like so glaringly obvious what's going on. I just found myself very annoyed by it. It just makes him look like a total fucking doofus. I thought Nick's whole quest to become extraordinary, like everything he did was just like so stupid. It was clearly all for comic relief. And I just like, especially because I didn't find it funny, it just felt so pointless. Both Seth and Owen are pretty interesting character-wise. Like I definitely was pretty interested in both of them. I kind of love how like devious Owen is. Seth is a pretty good love interest in that like you can really feel like how cute he is as a person, but like simultaneously that he's like kind of got this, he's got some stuff going on under the surface, which I like. Nick just is too dumb to be believed. It like begs the question of like why these two guys are even fucking interested in him. He's a fucking moron. To add to my list of minor beefs, I can't believe this book came up with a female character, like an original female character, to bash her in like the fan fiction sense. Like this book is so friendly to the police and so unfriendly to the press, which not a great look. This book has almost 5 stars on Goodreads. It is not getting that from me. Maybe I'm just not supposed to like books. Maybe I should just read books that I know I'm gonna hate. Shit. Hi, hello, what's good, what's up? It's July 26th. I'm still working on my compilation, by which I mean it's sitting on my shelf and I haven't touched it in a bit. If you remember, I did buy another novel for my Black Queer Readathon last month, and it just like never came. I'm following up on that, but in the meantime, I just bought it on Kindle, cause like fuck it, you know? So I don't know that I ever told you what it was. It was The Way to the Stars by Ancrum. I'm about 50% of the way through it. It's a weird read. It's like not bad, but weird. It follows a girl named Ryan Bird. At least I think it's Ryan. I've been pronouncing it Ryan. It's spelled R-Y-A-N-N, so it could be Rianne. I really hope it's Ryan. She was orphaned in her teen years, and so she is the guardian for her brother and her brother's infant child. They live in a trailer park, and she gets tapped by her history teacher to help another student who moves to their small town integrate, because she kind of has a way with wayward kids. Her whole group of friends are all kind of kids who really struggled to adjust and struggle within the system, and she's kind of the leader of their little merry band. And so she sets about befriending this girl whose name is Alexandria. She ends up inadvertently being responsible for Alexandria falling off a roof. And so to make up for that, she vows to help Alexandria with this big pet project that she has where she is monitoring inbound radio frequencies from the stars, because her mother years ago left on a spaceship to explore and is sending her messages from the stars. That's kind of what the book is about. Like even kind of explaining that concept, I don't think it like boils down very simply. The chapters are extremely short. The chapters are often like shorter than 1,000 words, which makes the book feel very long. And the prose is slightly dreamlike. There's kind of a dream logic to the way that the world works. A lot of the book takes place where the main character is extremely tired or hasn't slept in a long time. And so it has this kind of ethereal, liminal quality to it. One of the main things that like kind of pushes me out of the narrative is the dialogue, because a lot of the time people seem to say things to Ryan and Ryan seems to respond in ways that are very word of God, in terms of like it seems to funnel directly from the author in terms of like what Ryan needs to hear, but it doesn't seem to like come authentically out of her relationships with the people who are talking to her or like their history or what have you. And that isn't to say that it's like bad. It's just weird. Like it's just a very interesting way to tell a story. It just all feels like very surreal. It's hard to tell like what the intentionality is behind that, just in terms of like what the author is trying to do. It's very weird. It's a very weird book, but I'm 50% of the way through it, so I had to tell you about it or I was gonna end up in another position where I was like, well, I finished a book again. Hi, hello, what's up? I can't move because I have a kitty who's snuggled right against me, and if I move it'll disturb him, and I don't think any of us want that. So I finished The Way to the Stars. It was weird, like it was good. It's definitely worth reading. I don't feel like I had a super emotional reaction to it until I read the author's note, which is kind of wild. You know, it just stayed really, really dreamy. Like people either speak in poetry or like incredibly bluntly and casually, like in all caps. There's so many expositions expository things that kind of seem like they come out of nowhere, but also in such a way where it's like, well, yeah, I mean, that kind of went without saying, right? Like, that's why we didn't mention it before, because that kind of goes without saying, which kind of lends to the like surreal quality of it, where it's like when you're inside of a dream, nothing really has to be explained because your brain already knows what's going on, even if it doesn't make any sense to anybody else. Like, let me describe a scene in this book to you, and this will be slightly spoilery, but only for like a setup of the situation. I won't tell you anything that's happening in there. There is a scene towards the end of the book where the group of friends, who are all, let me remind you, high school seniors, are in an abandoned warehouse that was once burned down by one of the children's parents. That is never explained or contextualized. So they're in an abandoned warehouse, and in the center of the warehouse, they have welded a radio tower so that they can receive transmissions from Alexandria's mom, the Uninaut, whose name is Efferhild. So that's in the center of the room, on top of a rug that one of the kids has purchased, and they've filled the room with streamers and balloons and like brought in sound equipment so that they can throw a dance, like just for the group of kids. So there's Ahmed, there's Tomas, there's Blake, there's Shannon, there's James, who has his baby, there's Ryan, and there's Alexandria. So there are 7 teenagers here having their own private prom. They're all in prom outfits. So the 7 of them are all in prom outfits dancing in an abandoned warehouse, balloons and streamers, with a radio tower in the middle of the room, listening for words from the stars. And that's the setup of the scene. The setup that I just described to you is so fucking buck wild. If it were a novel that were very grounded in reality, it would be extremely difficult to like take seriously because it's so liminal, it's so ethereal. You're like, yeah. I was not put off by the visuals of it at all. I was like, this is a really cool dream I'm having. That's kind of the experience of the whole novel, is you're like, this is a really cool dream I'm having. I wish it had been just a tiny bit more grounded in reality so that we could actually get to know all of the people that she's friends with in a little bit, like in a little bit deeper of a way. But the way that the story is told, the story just kind of, in a way, assumes you already know them. The way that it's told does just assume, the way that a dream would, that you know all these people, you know the situation. It's such a strange book. It's very good. I really enjoyed it. Like, I think it's a solid 4. I feel like my complaints about it aren't really complaints the way that they are about a lot of books that I read. My complaints about it were like, they're so difficult to articulate. I think I'm a very easy crier, but I didn't cry through this book. And I think it was mostly because I just like, I couldn't truly connect with it because it was so ethereal. I don't know. A weird read. I have no idea what I'm gonna read now. I guess I could read the fucking compilation that alright, okay, I do know what I'm gonna read now. I don't know why I am like this. Hi, hello, what's good, what's up? It is August 1st and I have finished the compilation. I actually finished it yesterday, but I was feeling real bad yesterday, so I didn't want to film anything. It was good, it was good. It definitely turned me on to some indigenous authors I would not have known about otherwise. There are 9 stories in here. One of them is a poem. I can't think of any that I didn't like. It was a really quick read in comparison to the other compilations I read last month. I think probably because there were fewer stories in here. One of the stories I like the most is the first one in the compilations. It's called Aliens. It essentially reads like you're being told like some juicy gossip by somebody else. The entire thing is told in a very colloquial style that references you to like speaker and reader being in a community together and like knowing the same people, and so it like makes references to like, oh, you know this person, like how they did this and blah 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 blah. Well, he told me like, and it's all very, it's very good. It has a really great rhythm and flow to it. It starts out talking about a world that's gotten used to a distant looming alien force, and then it turns out that they're actually telling a story about somebody in the community who has always been like alien in a way that nobody noticed before. The symbolism of it like really caught me off guard, but it's very poignant, like the parallels that it draws. If you know anything about this compilation, I think you probably already know what my favorite story was. It was The Boys Who Became Hummingbirds by Daniel Heath Justice. This story is so fucking good. Like, I really struggled to put it into words. The prose is just gorgeous, and it basically tells the story of a really cruel, blighted world where people have kind of forgotten what beauty is. And it tells the story of a boy named Strange Boy who sees the beauty and like tries to bring it into his community, only to be shunned and hated and beaten as a result, just, you know, of being kind of who he is and like trying to bring his most authentic self into the world through laughter and singing and joy. After a particularly vicious beating, he is exiled, and another boy comes to him named Shadow Boy, who helps him heal from his wounds and helps him find love and community just within their own relationship. And the beauty of that connection transforms them both into hummingbirds. It's a really incredible and beautiful story. I want to read you a quote from this because it's so good. I think if you've been debating picking up this compilation, it's worth picking up based on the strength of this story alone. So I'm going to read you a quick passage from it. Strange Boy and Shadow Boy returned in feathered form to the sun-baked place they had once called home. There they made a startling discovery. In their new bodies, with eyes unveiled by fear or hate, they could see the very hearts of the people. And to their amazement and joy, in every direction they looked, there were hummingbirds. Jeweled feathers of every hue shone like multicolored flames through shamed flesh and unyielding bone. And the sound they heard was a chorus of captive hearts. So many luminous hearts beat like frantic wings, desperate for release but held fast by self-loathing and the fear of judgment and disregard. Strange Boy and Shadow Boy realized at last that they had never been alone. They were just the first to free their hearts and fly in their own beauty. This story is really good. I think pretty much every story in here is one that will speak to queer people, even if you are not BIPOC. I think there is a story in here that will speak to you, and I think it is a compilation very worth reading. I have this up on my Goodreads now. I don't rate the compilations. I feel really overwhelmed by the thought of even trying. I think this compilation is extremely valuable. I did it! Yeah! I read everything that I wanted to in July, so I'll be back in just a second to like give you my rundown of ratings and stuff. Woo! Hi, hello, welcome back from the vlog, or welcome to the timestamp. I'm actually recording this for the third time now, because the first time my mic was muted, and the second time my cat wouldn't stop crying and the audio was unusable. So now you get to watch me recreate the magic trick of trying to remember books that I read weeks ago that I barely remember. What I'm saying is that you watching the vlogs is better for both of us. So the first book that I read this month is I'm Not Dying With You Tonight by Kimberly Jones and Gilly Segal. This book follows Lena, who is black, and Campbell, who is white, who are both seniors at the same high school, trying to survive a night together after a confrontation at a football game turns lethal, and the girls have to rely on each other in order to try to get home. I gave this book 5 stars. I loved it. This book was a hard read. I actually started it last month, but it's a hard read because it's incredibly topical. I have like only adjectives to describe this book. It's thrilling, it's visceral, it's intense, it's heartbreaking, it's incredibly grounded. Like, I wouldn't describe this as like a new favorite, but I can't think of a single bad thing to say about it. Both of the characters are incredibly strong. The book isn't that interested in paving over Campbell's white ignorance. It isn't that interested in painting racism as an equal struggle for both parties involved. It's not interested in telling a story where there are bad people on both sides. I think it makes a lot of sense to compare this book to The Hate U Give, although I would recommend, if you're white, that you read both. Just topically, they're very similar. But I'm Not Dying With You Tonight is way more about being in proximity to racially motivated violence than it is about being a victim of racially motivated violence. I actually think that that experience is more relatable to a greater number of people. I think there are people of literally every experience who can relate to being in proximity to racially motivated violence. It's also middle grade to my understanding, and it feels very appropriate for that age. It feels like a really good book to get kids really thinking about racism in their interpersonal relationships, as well as racism as a system. So I thought this one was very good. I would recommend that you pick it up. I think it's great. The next one I read was Soft on Soft by Mina Waheed. Soft on Soft is a book about June and Selena. June is a makeup artist and Selena is an Instagram model as they slowly fall in love. Yeah, I didn't like it. I really wanted to. I think one of the reasons I didn't like it is because I was so disappointed by it. This book includes
sapphic asexual representation. As a sapphic asexual myself, I was very excited about that. I don't feel represented at all by the sapphic asexual representation in this book. And I think my anger over that is really kind of what manifested in me deeply disliking this book as much as I did. It's definitely a book that just is not for me, that will be very comforting to someone who's not me. If you're like the kind of person who likes coffee shop AUs and hates conflict in books, you will love this. I actually picked it up as a result of watching the Brown Girl Book Club, and they also loved this. They gave it 4 stars. I think that it's a book that's written in good faith. It is incredibly soft and sweet and slow, and it sucks, and I didn't like it. But like, that's just my opinion, and my opinion is subjective. That brings us to The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune. The Extraordinaries is about a teenage boy named Nick in a world where superheroes exist. Nick is obsessed with and has like kind of a fan crush on one of his local superheroes. And after he meets him, he becomes obsessed with becoming an extraordinary himself. I also gave this book 2 stars. Soft on Soft just wasn't for me. This book was deliberately written to piss me off. I'm willing to admit that part of the reason I think I didn't like this book is timing. Nick is a white kid with mostly white friends and a dad who is a cop. And that is not a great look right now. There are 3 black characters in this book. The black character that gets the most screen time is one of Nick's friends. She is defined chiefly by being angry and violent and vaguely predatory towards her younger white girlfriend. This book is also really trying to be funny. There are a lot of jokes in it that are just in very poor taste. There are several rape jokes in this book for children. There are several jokes about police brutality. What can I say but yikes? The entire plot of this book hinges on the main character being incredibly stupid. He's just a fucking dipshit. If that's the sort of thing that turns you off in books, you're really not gonna like this one. To try and give it a fair shake, the prose is pretty charming. There is a love triangle in this one, and both love interests are pretty well realized. But overall, just the next one was The Way to the Stars by Ancrum. The Way to the Stars follows a girl named Ryan who is in her senior year of high school. Ryan is immensely poor. She is raising both her brother and her brother's child, Charlie. He gets tapped by her history teacher to help a new student named Alexandria integrate into the school population. So she does her best to kind of take Alexandria under her wing, but Alexandria is kind of resistant to it. Ryan ends up being part and parcel to Alexandria getting badly hurt as a result of this outreach, so agrees to work with her on a project that she can no longer do as a result of being injured. That's the least spoilery summary that I can give. This one's weird. I gave this one 4 stars. I definitely enjoyed reading it. It's very good. It's very surreal. It's a very sci-fi light book. Like, there are sci-fi elements to it. It's a book that's very much about space travel, and specifically that seems to have an immense love for the philosophy behind space travel. It is a book that is very existential. It feels like you're reading a transcription of a dream that you're having. The prose is very floaty, and the situations that the characters find themselves in are very strange. It's a book that's very much about found family and life and death. And that's just kind of the mood I'm in, so I was really down for it. The next one I read was Love Beyond Body, Space, and Time. This is another compilation, this one of queer Indigenous authors. I wanted to try and read some more work by Indigenous authors. Last month when I was researching diversity in publishing, I ended up learning that there have been no Indigenous authors debuted on the New York Times bestseller list in the last few years. And so I decided that I wanted to expand the number of Indigenous authors that I was reading, just to integrate Indigenous authors and Indigenous stories more into my TBR. So I found this queer lit compilation. I thought I would use it in the same way that I used the compilations last month to kind of give me a jumping off point. And I'm really glad that I picked it up. It's a great compilation. It's a lot shorter than the compilations I read last month, but really every short story in this compilation I think is well written and well realized. There are some that are pretty light. One involves a veterinarian going to Mars. Others are more serious and have a more traditional folktale type aesthetic to them, like The Boys Who Became Hummingbirds. And still others kind of tread like right in between. They're all sci-fi themed stories, which I think is really wonderful. I think so often in American culture, Indigenous culture is relegated to the distant past. I think it's wonderful to be able to recognize that Indigenous culture is something that we should be working to bring forward with us, not just into the present, but into the future. And obviously the Indigenous experience is huge. It represents a ton of different groups of a ton of different people. And so I feel like I've just kind of sampled like a single droplet of an ocean. Just getting the chance to read a few stories by authors of this experience was an immense gift, and I really enjoyed it. I think that this compilation is really worth picking up. And the final book that I read, which I'm struggling to even figure out how I'm going to talk about, is Tied Up with a Bow by Maggie Blackbird. I was looking for more Indigenous authors to read, and I found her listed on a list of queer Indigenous books. So I looked at the book, and it looks like a romance, and I was like, hey, I'm toying around with getting more into romance. Let me try it on. This book is erotica. This book has the word in the first sentence of the book.
Nice.
It's very good. Like, it's fun. This book follows Gavin, who is the new chief of his community, and Slade, who is his ex. Slade is very pissed off, very maligned, because Gavin started out very ugly duckling and then kind of took off and got hot off the res and then came back to be the rich man who runs everything. And Slade thinks that was a dick move. There's an implied betrayal between the two of them, but it's Christmas and Gavin becomes obsessed with getting Slade back. And the way that he goes about getting Slade back is by throwing himself in him. We stand. If this is something that you think you would be into, a male-on-male romance, the Mullamoo to my Wallawoo, if that's something that you are into, the book is cheap, it's very quick, it's very spicy. Go give Maggie Blackbird some money. And that is everything that I read in July. I have a few books that I have already started on for this month. I'm actually reading 3 books at the same time right now. I'm not going to tell you what any of them are because I like to surprise you. That's one of the few fun things I still get to do in my life. So I'll let you know what I'm reading when we do this all again next month. Oh, I wanted to tell you, it turns out, in fact, that institutional racism does not go away after a single month. So just expect this to be part of my ending card every time for the foreseeable future. As there were last month, there are donation links below, as well as lots of other ways that you can contribute to BLM. Anyway, yeah, that's it. That's all I got for now. So bye.
Almost all your taxes go to military installations on foreign bases, 800 of them, but no other country has a military base in America, 'cause it's a fear tactic, it's a fear tactic. We are a fascist police state. Fascist police state, wasting your money. It could go to education or making millions of jobs, upgrading our energy grid. But nope, no, 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 no. We are a fascist police state. Fascist police state.